Hi, and welcome to the Creative Monkey Prison podcast. I'm here today with Dante Terese, who is an American author of two books that I believe are really quite different in many ways. So I'm looking forward to finding out about what sparked the creativity of. So welcome from across the pond.
Yes. Welcome from across the pond. It's nice to see you over there. Is it night there?
It is dark here. It's currently 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's pitch
Okay.
black outside and very cold. So
Yep. Well, over here in the Rust Belt of the United States, it is about 12 noon. It's also very cold. And for those of you who don't know what the Rust Belt is, that's the part of the middle of the country where the factories were, and the factories are gone. And so a bunch of us artist types are taking over.
that's good.
Yeah.
And very similar over here. I'm in Derbyshire in England, and I live in a little town called Wirksworth, or near Wirksworth. And again, there's quite a good creative little community there. So it's very nice to be in an area that's like that. Do you
Good.
think some of that creativity has come about because of the decline? Is it because people are just experimenting with different things because they've got more time in their hands, or?
Well, I think let me see. It's kind of a lot of factors. I mean, when forests burn, new growth comes up, and I think it's the same way with cities and towns and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the big creative rebirth right now is because COVID, for the most part, is under control, and people are just you know taking going on these adventures and allowing themselves to do the things that they were doing when they were locked up in their apartment and really, going for it. It's great.
Do you not feel that a lot of people just, when they're given that time and that space, they just end up on Facebook and they just end up watching Netflix and they consume stuff rather than actually making it? I mean, is it just that you happen to know a bunch of creative people who escape that?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. I mean, I do know folks who spend a lot of time on Facebook, but then when they get done with their Facebook, they do paintings and other things like that. So I do think people had to learn about, getting along with themselves, about being alone. And I think that skill was, it was sort of on the wayside, but now we're spending more time like that now.
That's good. So, I mean, have you always been a creative person? Has it been a kind of since childhood? Have you always enjoyed creativity?
Yeah, we joke about, like, there was a book about, they called it, I think, the left brain, and
Hmm.
they said that people who were creative have, you know, it's all on the left side of the brain, creativity. And I think the right side of my brain has a vacancy.
The right hand side of the brain is the kind of pragmatic and problem solving, or?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's definitely not just doing all these mad little projects and stuff. I think the right side of the brain are the people that can really, force their brain and get it under control and sort of really discipline it to do um, a lot of serious research and projects and stuff like that. And God bless them. That's great. We need that. Um, don't know what it is. I have one of those bouncing brains. Those of us in the art community have that.
So yeah, a slightly unruly side to your thinking that allows for exploration of stuff, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's not so fun when you're trying to sleep and then you're getting an idea and you're saying, "Oh, I'll remember it in the morning." It's like, "No, I won't. I have to write it down now." But, it's the way it is.
So as a child, were you writing then, or when did the writing come about? I mean, writing a book, I've got a lot of admiration for because it's quite a big task to undertake.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's pretty daunting when you fully make the commitment to it. I was always in creative endeavors. I would work in kitchens as a baker and pastry chef. And while you're sitting there loading like 40 eggs into a mixer, to make a cheesecake, that's kind of boring. And so being that I have one of those art type brains, my mind was wandering, and I would be inventing all these little stories and such, and characters, and picturing it and visualizing it and stuff like that. Thankfully, I never screwed up too badly when I was mixing something, when I got a little too distracted there. If you give me any task to do that is kind of repetitive or anything like that, I'll be in the laundromat, texting myself chapters. I mean, I just, you know, the brain is always bouncing.
If you've been like a neurosurgeon or something else, you may not have had that time and space
Oh
to
no,
think.
there would be so many malpractice suits. I think I would last like maybe one day on the job. But finally, like a couple of my friends, when I wrote the first book that I put out, when I finished it, and I showed it to a few of my friends. It has the spicy title, but not a lot of spice. It's called Sex, Death, and Diane. So when I finished that, a few of my friends just said, "Will you finally get over it and publish it? I mean, put it out, and take the plunge." And so I did. And then, after that, it got a little easier, and then I continued. The next one, which I conveniently have here, is called The Base, Book One. And that one is going to be part of a trilogy. The second part is coming out on New Year's Day, Book Two. And like I said, it just, once you do it, like once you get over the
I'm
fear
great
or
for
the
feeling, isn't
all
it?
of that stuff, you just do it.
So the books are very different in nature, aren't they? I mean, the first book, and again, you saying that you were hesitant to publish it, was that just nerves of whether you'd completed it enough, or that you needed, or just confidence to put it out into the world?
I'd say it was also confidence, but then I was saying myself, oh, I don't know how to do that. And then, I just had to get over the excuses. I just sort of had to, learn, find out how to do it. And so I just did it. And the second one, the base and the series, the base, I think I'm more into a system now.
Hmm.
I'm not, my proofreader's not pulling her hair out. The first book, I mean, she found a lot of things, and I'm very thankful to her that she found them. But it taught me a lot, like pages need numbers, little things like that. I mean, I read hundreds of books. How did I not number the pages on the book? Like, I learned, and I'm still learning, and I'm always going to learn.
So with the first book, what was the inspiration for that one? Because I've had a look at it, and it looks like a really good read. It looks like it's got a lot of stuff about life growing up and the world in general.
Thank you. The first book, Sex, Death, and Diane, it's about two best friends who live in a small town where nothing ever happens. And they graduate high school together, and one of them goes to the big city to go to college. And the other one stays in the small town where nothing ever happens. And something happens. I was growing up during the 80s where, the music was great. I mean, really great, just constantly evolving. We had, you know, great stuff on your side of the Atlantic and good stuff happening here, and a lot of social change. And unfortunately, that is when the AIDS epidemic started.
Hmm.
And that just saw an explosion of activism. And that book is actually based on my life. And I did witness, tons of those things. I mean, I did witness like thousands of people sitting down and shutting down Wall Street, and
Is that like
all
in
these all
the
these
in the
things
Rage
that,
Against the Machine video?
yes, yes, yeah. No, I mean, all those things are real. I mean, it was very, very different than being in this little cocoon of a small town.
Do you think in that time that has changed from, like you say, back in the 80s when there was all this very fresh music out there? I mean, I heard a statistic lately that in about 1980, there were like 200 bands in the top 10 over the course of the year, whereas this year it's been three, you
Yeah,
know?
it's amazing like that. I mean, And the musicianship was just phenomenal. And there were so many different influences. It's like earlier today I heard Culture Club, and I was listening to that, and I'm like, wow, they have Caribbean influences in that. They
Hmm.
have pop in that, and there's so many different things merged together. And it seems that now it's just the era of the solo artist and very heavy on the electronic.
Yeah. So, I mean, from that time, who were the other big influences music wise for you? Because I find music fascinating. I think you get the distilled nature of an artist coming across through lyrics and such, and I think it's a great form of expressionism. And I think it has got sanitized in some ways now, or it's been turned into a kind of, a formula rather than the expression of art and what people were going through. I mean, if you look at the artists back then, I think there was a deeper kind of lyrical content to a lot of the stuff. And I know there is still that stuff out there, but who were the ones who really influenced you back in the day?
Let me see. I did like metal.
Yeah.
Metal was just fun. I also liked Susie and the Banshees. I liked Culture Club. I liked punk. I liked, some really good pop singers. I liked Barbara Streisand. And, we didn't really hear voices that had electronic additives.
Hmm.
You either got out there and you sang it or you didn't. We heard a lot of musicianship. People would stay up all night trying to learn how Eddie Van Halen played, one little part, and people would try to stay up all night and try to learn about how this one played a drum part or not. I mean, and then we loved the clothes. I mean, we loved Stevie Nicks. And out here, there's even like a day where a bunch of drag queens to get together, and it's like a night of 1,000 Stevies, where they all dress really witchy like her and stuff. I mean, she still has an enormous following, and everyone loves her clothes. And I'd love to steal her closet myself. But I mean, it is very different now. I mean, the lyric content also, like, I really agree with you. There was some really good writers, and there were a lot of songs that really touched the heart. And there were some musicians that you sort of felt like you knew where they would stand on certain issues and stuff too.
And I think certainly going back to the metal, I mean, I was big into Faith No More and Nine Inch Nails and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. And
yeah,
again, I found the lyrics very inspirational. They were things that I hadn't thought about, and it was interesting reading about Faith No More. He said that he grew up in quite a small American town,
yeah.
quite a kind of like closed attitudes, religious backgrounds, and stuff. And then they come out with all of this, and you're getting that kind of
Hmm.
raw honesty of lived experience. And I think that's what can come across in music, but also in books, and through the stories that we tell we can communicate back to times when things
Right.
were a little bit different. So if someone's reading Sex, Death and Diane, do you think it will help transport them back to an earlier time when things were
Oh,
different?
yes. Yeah, I've had several people tell me um that they remembered a lot of the things that I was talking about, and that they also felt a connection with that too.
And I think this is the thing. I mean, a lot of kids now, they've never seen a tape cassette.
Right.
They don't understand about a time before the internet and mobile phones. And it's like, we grew up without Google and mobile phones. And it was a very different way of living. If you wanted to talk to someone, you had to go and meet them. You had to go and knock on their door.
Well, I mean, also, I mean, being in a car with a map.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an experience, sitting there trying to figure the map out. And nowadays, I mean, it is getting a little silly now. I was in a cab the other day, and you know how people have the voice that tells you, make a left now. Well, now apparently you can get those voices in a celebrity imitator.
Hmm.
So you hear Darth Vader saying, make a left now, you know, or something like that, or Cardi B, and I think that's hysterical. If you're in a cab driver, if you're sitting in the back of the cab and you hear Darth Vader saying, go, I would be like, oh man, I should get out of this cab.
So times have changed, and the second book then, The Base, is that set in modern day or is that set a number of
No,
years
that
back?
that is set. There is a scene that happens in Portugal. The base is about a bunch of military research scientists. And what happens is when the military finds out that you're a little too good at what you do, like if you stand out, if you're not a slacker, not that there's slackers in the military, but if you really stand out, if you're really obsessed about some little area of science or whatever, instead of like every 3 years or so, they transfer you here to another base. Well,
Hmm.
instead of going to just another base, they transfer you to the base.
Aha.
That base. And so you end up working with, um, specialists in their field. And so these scientists, and you can see I have three of them, these wonderful actors that volunteered to go on the cover for me. The one in the middle there, Dennis Liverani, he's an actor out here, and he is portraying the Bugman. And that is someone who is a military entomologist. He is an expert on insects. So he has to, every couple of months they give you a few new scientists to join those three. The gentleman over here, um, Roy is playing the part of Mr. Clark, who animates any of these things that they invent. So if they invent a device and that device needs to walk or crawl or fly or whatever, he gives that thing the ability to do that through his computer expertise and everything else like that. And the actor over here, played by Doug Pectrick, who is playing the part of Cullen. He is in charge of giving them realistic skin and stuff like that. He dreams these potions up that make their exo coverings that don't get damaged by the sun and don't get damaged by the elements and things like that, and that can withstand all of these things, like being in a tank in Saudi Arabia, not melting. So when they make these devices, they can work.
So we're talking about scientists who are making military devices based on insects.
Well, they add the military entomologist into the mix, and so he contributes those attributes because that's his expertise. So he studies insects and insect anatomy, and you can look at something like a helicopter and you can see that it looks similar to a dragonfly. That maybe the military has been, utilizing some of this in some ways. You could look at certain vehicles and stuff and say, that kind of looks like this bug or that bug. So the scientists have to pull their collective imagination and knowledge and research into making a device to the specifications of the military. The military every couple of months is going to hand them a piece of paper and say, we need this built and these are the attributes that it has to have. But while they're doing all that research and while they're making that device, there are some really evil spies and thieves that are trying to steal it. Ooh.
So what was the inspiration for this? Have you got connections with the military or did you read
Well,
stuff that kind of sparked this off?
several several things inspired that. I have friends who did live on military bases, and so I've been to a few bases, and I've been very impressed with the people I've met there. Also, I garden, and so when you garden, you see bugs. You see all kinds of bugs, and sometimes the bugs eat your garden. But but sometimes you look at them and you just didn't, you look at that and you say, wow, look at all of those crazy attributes that this thing has. There's certain species of beetles that can survive being run over by a car.
Yeah.
You know, there are certain types of spiders that the silk that they spin is stronger than a lot of the things that we have on the market. And so, there's a lot of it was really interesting to me that when I was doing the research for the book for the various projects, like when the scientists were doing their research, I had to research their projects
Hmm.
as well. I mean, I had to find out, is this going to actually be feasible or anything? And so I was amazed to find out how many of the ideas that I came up with are already in the research phase.
So do you just research this on Google? Is this a kind of internet kind of scramble round for information, or?
It was some of it was internet, and some of it was visiting places and um, like going to the botanical gardens and looking around there at stuff, and um, you know, getting books and stuff. I mean, I was, as far as like the general public, I wasn't really afraid too much of the what the general public would say about the books. But my father is a research scientist,
Hmm.
and so I knew that he was going to not just read the book, but also, really look at it and make sure that it was up to snuff and that all the research was correct and everything. So I was really afraid of his review, but it passed the dad test.
So, are there commonalities with the first book? I mean, obviously, you've got a writing style that you probably stick to a little bit, but I mean, is it very much based on characters and relationships, and what's the motivations behind it?
I think that the first book was sort of my love affair with the 80s. And also, I wanted to say a thank you to all of those people who demonstrated during the time of AIDS when it first came out. I really wanted to give a big thank you to the people in ACT UP and those other organizations for what they did, because in our country, um, there there were waiting periods for drugs, medications, and when you have people who might not have as much time left, perhaps they should be allowed to try some of these things. I mean, and the approval process was very long, and the people in ACT UP, they spoke out about um, making medications available sometimes sooner, especially to people who, had exhausted some of their resources, and 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 they opened so many doors for everybody, not just themselves. And so I wanted to, the first book, I wanted to give them a shout out. I wanted to give them a big thank you, and then also just that was sort of just a crazy thing, telling people what it was like to be around in the 80s with all that crazy new music popping up everywhere and new ideas popping up everywhere. It was sensory overload when you came out of a small town. It was great.
So, what do you find hardest about being a writer?
I think I've always struggled with turning my brain off. I mean, when it's time to go to sleep, turn the brain off. And then I also think like I really had to make the characters consistent. Um, like in the book, the base, some of that is coming from the point of view of the one of the scientists' young daughters, who's maybe around 5 or 6. So every time she speaks, I can't write her as if I am speaking.
Hmm.
Um, the first book I wrote, Sex, Death, and Diane, it's easy to write about yourself and point of view and stuff like that. But I also had to switch perspectives a lot in the base, because now you're talking to a 40-year-old, talking from the perspective of a 40-year-old military scientist. So your vocabulary is different. The way you discuss things and the innuendos and stuff are very different. 6-year-olds are very pure, and their vocabulary is very limited. It's like good, bad,
It's more
Um,
black and white.
yeah, it really is. And so I always had to be conscious of that, when I was writing about, make the whole thing match. You just can't write sentences. You have to, who is saying that sentence? And what is their vocabulary like, and what is their worldview like, and really, really color that character correctly, not just write sentences.
There's an interesting point that you make. I mean, to get the plausibility of a book, and I listened to the audio of the introduction to the base, and it introduces characters very well, and they're very plausible. And I was like, yeah, I can see this being a good book. And again, you can lose people on the first couple of pages, can't you? If it's not plausible and it's not sounding authentic, then you're going to lose people very quickly.
Yeah, well, no, I know, especially since, it is somewhat categorized as science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's no spaceships in there or aliens or stuff. I mean, these are scientists who are working on a military base, so it has, I would say, 80%. It's 80% grounded in reality, and as in places that people have seen. People have seen bars. People have seen, trailer homes and things like that. And so, you know, you have you have to you have to make all of that cohesive, and then adding the science element into that, you have to make sure that that is plausible, but also as factually correct as you can. So the percentage of the audience who does have a scientific background and is looking for a science fiction read, so that they're not saying, this is crackerjack. I mean, um, and they don't shoot holes through all the theories. You want to honor them also and challenge them.
So, what would you recommend to someone who feels that they may have a book in them, but they're just not sure? Have you got any advice for them?
I would tell anyone to do it. You know, to do it. It is it's a wonderful thing to come home to. I mean, especially in the winter and stuff. Now, I'm currently adapting the series of the base into a screenplay. And when it's kind of inhospitable out there and you come home in the winter, it's nice to, sit down, relax in front of the computer, and then kill a character. I mean, it's just, you have these experiences that you just can't explain to your coworkers at work, like, well, yesterday this giant spider escaped, and, but it's a blast. It's a lot of fun.
I think it's interesting, like, creativity is a very, it's free, it's a pleasure that anyone can have. And like you say, some people are more right brained and just go, oh, no, it's just not for me. I'm not creative. And you do hear people say that, I'm just not a creative person. And yet probably they could have been a bit more creative as, they develop those things.
I think adulthood, people are somehow sort of convinced into the idea that when you grow up, you're supposed to abandon all of these things. You're supposed to get rid of your imagination. That's
I
bad.
missed that memo.
Yeah, me too. I'm very thankful I missed that. But I know so many people who refer to their past artistic endeavors in past tense.
Okay.
I used to do this, I used to do that, and it's I wish that they would do something kind of on the side, a little something, I mean, but I think people equate it with immaturity.
See, I mean, I've got the other view that I think, if you are consuming all the time, if you're just watching and listening, you can take stuff from that. But actually to be able to produce and share back out again is a great joy. And it I think it's a very mentally healthy thing to do.
Yeah, I really enjoy it, and I can't wait to, make it even more three-dimensional. I have plans to make the base into a series that people can actually stream and watch. And so I've made another goal, I've thrown a dart at the calendar, and I've said that in the early 2025 I'm going to make a trailer. And
Excellent.
yeah, and so I know so many actors and artists and so many people like that in the community. So I'm just going to sort of round everyone up under one tent and say, let's see if we can do this. But I just love the energy that all these people give off. I mean, everyone has, at least 10 unfinished projects in their place, and that's a good way to live.
I think this is the thing. If you can see something happening, like you had a vision that you could make a book, and then you take the steps, and it manifests, it occurs, and the fact that you are entertaining that you could make a screenplay makes it very likely that you can make a screenplay. Being able to actually visualize it happening makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah, when I first got the screenwriter software, there's a big difference between writing a book and writing a screenplay. Especially one that is going to be like a TV series. At the last minute or two of every episode of a TV series should make you want to watch the next one.
Yeah.
And so there's all these things that sort of go into it, but I'm really enjoying adapting it. I mean, at first I was ripping my hair out because there's so many technical things, but you want to have it technically correct for the camera people, for the other people on that side of the equation, because you don't want them telling you, this needs to be rewritten, or lose your chance at getting through the door. So, but at this point, I am really enjoying writing it into a screenplay because it's much more visual, and so it's a different type of imagination, and you already kind of know the characters as if they're your friends or something. So it's really interesting.
So with the screenplay software, I've never even heard of screenplay software, but I guess it has to exist. Do you find that really quite an essential part of the process for helping adapt it? I don't know the techniques for adapting into a screenplay.
The software for it, they have all these specifications. Like if you have an individual character and that individual character is going to speak, then that character's name has to go in the middle of the page. And then there's what you and I would call parentheses are called parentheticals. And so underneath that character's name, there is like parentheticals. And inside the parentheticals, it describes, like, say, for example, Macy, who is the daughter of one of the scientists. So you have the name Macy, and then underneath it in the parentheticals, it says that she is getting ready to go out the front door, and that she has a towel on her head. Um, and then underneath it, it has that Macy is speaking in a muffled voice because she has a towel on her head, because she's pretending to be a ghost. And so it's very different because you have to describe everything. And they even have, is it an interior shot or is this an exterior shot? Cullen, one of the scientists, he gets out of the car, but in parentheticals you say it's a beat up old family car.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all these.
Very explicit, yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of micromanaged, but there it is.
So with the books, do you find like promoting the books like a chore, or is that actually part of the fun of being a published artist?
Initially, when I started off with some podcasts and things like that, it was kind of nerve-wracking because I had to learn the whole procedure and everything. I had to figure out which computer was capable of it and make sure it was fully charged and all the technical stuff. But I really do enjoy meeting the different people that I have spoken to, because I get to hear, their slices of life and, communicate about things. So the chore part is when you are trying to, get interviews or get, all the paperwork. That kind of thing can be somewhat of a chore. Another thing that was really fun, when I was in the stages of planning the audiobook, was auditioning the actors to read that. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, there were some people who had so many sound effects and things, and it was somewhat tempting, to have that, but then, I didn't want it to overshadow what they were saying. I mean, after it could be a distraction if it's not used sparingly. So I found a really good actor. There's a very popular show here in the States. It's called Dateline. And there's an announcer on there that everybody loves. He's this older gentleman. His name is Keith Morrison. And Dateline is a true crime story. Every week they come out with another episode of some unsolved mystery, some true crime, and they do it very well. And so the actor I found, Steve Gannett, I mean, to narrate the books in the base series, he sounds a good deal similar to Keith Morrison, but he was able to voice so many different voices. I mean, he would do that 6-year-old girl convincingly, and then do a male voice convincingly. And he had just a tremendous range of voices. He must have like multiple personalities or something. I mean, it's really, really interesting and a lot of fun.
So are you an avid reader as well? Do you
Yes.
read a lot? So who are your kind of favorite artists, writers at the moment?
I tend to stick to biographies and autobiographies. And I have found, and sometimes I do very elevated ones, like Jesse Norman, the opera singer,
Mhm.
um, and some humanitarians, and things like that. But sometimes I get into, the celebutainment people, like I read Paul Stanley, the bass player from Kiss. I read his autobiography, and I was really impressed. I mean, that with that long of a career and something like that, that he's a smart man.
I remember reading about the Rolling Stones, and they said, like we come across as a bunch of thickos, but we're not. And it's like, this persona they had to give to be cool and successful was
Yeah.
very different from who they were a lot of the time. And I think that's quite interesting. And when you read a biography, you're going to get, both sides of the story, which is, yeah.
Yeah, well, also they have to have the ones who do like the real stadium places, like you'll never see the Rolling Stones play like a small club, really. Pretty much since they've been out of the starting gate, they've always been playing these stadiums and just massive venues. And the same with Kiss, I really enjoyed the gratitude that Kiss had for their audience and just for their whole experience. I mean, Paul Stanley was actually born without one ear.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was. And, for him to go on to be a world famous musician and, um, you know, go in front of thousands of people on a daily basis and stuff, and very philanthropic and, just amazing turn of events for him. I mean, he was the kid that the other kids sort of made fun of because after peeking at him and stuff, they realized, oh, you don't have another ear.
So do you think there is a crossover between your interest in sort of like autobiographical work and understanding characters, and then do you feel that you kind of get some of those nuances into your books?
I think so because I think that is what made me want the consistency
Hmm.
of the character. Like if you're having a discussion between two people and they're two very different people, the audience has to know that. The audience has to know that the 6-year-old is speaking, and and it has to everything has to be consistent, you know. And then when it switches to a different character, they have to know, okay, well, this character is a little gruff and, he goes to the bars a lot and stuff. And so he's not going to speak in the king's English. He's going to, you know, sometimes tell it like it is, he's not going to be polite, he's going to just tell it like it is. And so you have to, when you switch characters and stuff, you have to, you know, make sure people know that's the character.
So yeah, to really step into other people's shoes. And again, like you say, some people don't have as much strength in that area, and you've obviously developed that strength. So, I mean, do you feel that's something that you've managed to kind of build on over time It's something that you've
Yeah.
learned to do.
Yeah, and especially now that I'm adapting into the screenplay, I have to also think about what do they wear, because the super rich villain who has acquired all of that monetary, success and stuff the wrong way. I mean, she's sort of addicted to a style of opulence,
Hmm.
and and she just keeps wanting to get more and more expensive and all of those material things and stuff. So she's not going to dress the same as the military wives on the base, because she's dealing in millions, and um, and their homes and stuff. I have to get a sense of what is Venus is that villain, and I have to. The house that Venus lives in is not going to look the same as the military family with two young kids. I mean, when you have, two little ones, you are not going to have white upholstery,
Nope.
you know. Um, so there's all these things that I have to visualize, like the family, the young military family. Like a big treat for them is going into the big town, going up through a drive-through place, and getting a little bit of ice cream for each of the kids. Like that's a big treat for them. But Venus is going to like five-star restaurants.
The two books are out. They are available on Amazon, presumably.
That is correct.
Excellent. And people
Do
can
you folks get Amazon over
we
there?
do. Yeah, no, I've checked your books out on Amazon. The links from your website work. So your website is danteterese.com. And I
Yes,
will put that in the show notes as well. So that will link through people to you and to your
I
website
appreciate
and to
that.
the books. But yeah, it's been really nice talking to you. It's been very interesting hearing about stuff. And actually, I'm going to read one of the books, I think, because they look really a good start. So I may actually start with Sex, Death, and Diane, I think. So
Okay.
I will order a copy of that and I will let you know how that goes.
I appreciate that. And when this recording comes out, if you would also be so kind as to send me the links, I will put that on the website and everything else to let the people on this side of the Atlantic uh, know about your show as well and hear this our discussion.
Well, I've really enjoyed talking to you, and it's
You too.
lit up a little bit of my creative brain as well because I write poetry, but I never really
Yes.
considered writing a book. And again, there is that fear that it's just too much, that too hard. Like I can write an epic poem, but to write a book seems. But again, it's having a go. It's starting off somewhere, writing a chapter, creating a story, creating a plot. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a good thing to get into. Like you say, to come home on a winter's night and to have something to look forward to that doesn't cost you money and potentially could even make you money.
Well,
um,
it also gives you a challenge. I mean, um, I don't have a TV.
that's
I
it.
do have a computer, so if I
Yeah,
want to stream something, I can, but I don't always want to sit down and let someone else entertain me. I want to, challenge myself and see if I can entertain myself and others.
that sounds like a great quote to finish on. So thank you very much, Dante. It's been lovely chatting,
You
and
too. Thank you,
hopefully we'll
Clive.
catch up with you again some point. So thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.